We are now on the record. My name is Jacob Arndt. I'm a videographer for Galco Litigation Services. Today's date is January 10th, 2019, and the time is 7:59 a.m. This video deposition is being held in Kansas City, Missouri, in re National Prescription Opiate Litigation for the United States District Court, Northern District of Ohio, Eastern Division. The deponent is Lisa Cardetti. Will counsel please identify themselves?
Mark Dearman and Richard Mallinckrodt from Robbins-Geller, Rudman Dowd on behalf of the plaintiffs and the PEC.
Rocky Tsai, Ropes and Gray on behalf of the witness, Ms. Cardetti, and Mallinckrodt LLC.
Cassandra LaRussa, Ropes and Gray, on behalf of the witness and Mallinckrodt LLC.
Christopher Markham, Jones Day on behalf of Walmart.
Trisha Hirschfeld on behalf of the Tennessee plaintiffs.
Paul Bersati, Armstrong Teasdale on behalf of Cardinal Health.
The court reporter is John Arndt and will now swear in the witness.
Yeah, ma'am, if you could raise your right hand for me, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mark Dearman. We met before the depo started. I'm going to be asking you some questions today. Is this the first depo you've ever given?
Yes.
Okay. Would you state your full name for the record?
Lisa Marie Cardetti.
And what is your current occupation?
I am currently occupied at Rising Pharmaceuticals as Associate Vice President of Sales.
And what is your residential address? Because this is your first depo, I'm going to give you some rules that we both need to follow in order to get a clear record. Like I said, I'm going to be asking you questions which you need to answer. Unless your counsel instructs you not to answer, there may be objections from time to time. After counsel objects, unless they instruct you not to answer, you need to answer the question, okay?
Understood.
It's important that you answer orally because we all nod our head and say, nah, but it doesn't give us a clear record. So if you would please answer orally, we will all remind you if it happens because it's just common. If you don't understand a question that I ask you, say, Mark, I don't understand that question, and I will do my best to rephrase it, because if you answer my question, I'm going to assume that you understood the question. It's also important that you wait for me to ask my entire question, even though you may know what the question is going to be already. It's important for the record that I get my entire question out and then allow you to get your entire answer out so that we have a clear record. It's also important that we don't speak at the same time, because if we do that a lot, our court reporter's fingers may fall off. Okay?
Understood.
And you understand those
Yeah.
guys?
Yes.
Okay. Are you represented by counsel here today?
I am.
Okay, and who are you represented by?
Ropes and Gray.
Okay. Do you have a a written representation agreement with Ropes and Gray?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you have that with you here today?
I personally do not. Please address my counsel.
Okay. But you do have a written agreement?
I do, yes.
Okay. Are you being compensated for for appearing here today?
No.
Okay. Are you compensating the attorneys from Ropes and Gray for their representation of you?
No, I'm not.
I'm going to show you an exhibit. I have to depo notice. The first one, I don't know if it's a number, it'll just say notice. Yeah, that's not it. Here we go. That's it. Show you what we're going to mark as Exhibit 1. I've got 2 more copies, so you all can decide how you want to share those. Have you ever seen that document before? It was just handed to you.
Yes, I have.
Okay. When was the first time that you saw it?
I saw it yesterday.
Is that the first time that you saw it?
Yes.
If you turn to page 3 of the document, it says Schedule A and it has your name under it. Do you see that?
Yes.
Have you brought any documents with you to the deposition today?
No.
Have you looked in your own personal papers and belongings for any documents responsive to Schedule A?
No.
Did you provide your counsel with any documents?
No, I did not.
How many times did you meet with counsel?
2 times.
When was the first time?
Oh, I don't remember the exact date, approximately a month or so ago.
Okay. And where did you meet?
In Kansas City.
Okay. And who was present?
There were 2 members of Ropes and Gray council present,
Do you know who those attorneys are?
Rocky and I forget the other woman's name.
Okay. Did you understand the other participant to be an attorney?
Yes.
Did anyone else attend besides you and the 2 attorneys?
No.
Okay. How long did you meet for?
Approximately 4 to 5 hours.
During that meeting, I'm not asking you to tell me what documents, but during that meeting, did counsel show you any documents?
Yes.
Did any of the documents which counsel showed you refresh your recollection as to any issue?
No.
When is the second time that you met with counsel?
Yesterday
In Kansas City?
in Kansas City, correct?
And for how long?
Same, about 4 to 5 hours.
And who was in attendance at that meeting?
Rocky and Cassie.
Like my prior question, were you shown any documents at that meeting?
Yes.
Did any of those documents refresh your recollection as to
No.
any of the issues?
No,
Okay. Did you bring any documents to that meeting?
I did not. No.
Okay. I had asked you earlier whether or not you had looked through any of your own belongings for any documents. Do you have an office at your home?
I do.
You have filing cabinets at your home?
No, I don't have file cabinets.
Okay. Do you have documents that related to your time at Mallinckrodt at your home?
No, I do not.
Okay, and how is it that you know that you don't have any documents relating to you and Mallinckrodt at your house?
I don't have any documents at my house. It's a very small office. I don't have any actual paperwork or documents electronically or anything at my house.
Okay, but just to be clear, you did not look to see whether you had any documents, correct?
I know I do not have any documents.
Okay, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but I'm asking you how it is you know if you didn't look.
I know what I have in my home office.
Are you aware that this country is experiencing an opioid epidemic?
I am aware.
Has this epidemic affected your community?
I'm not sure of the details around how it's affected my community.
And I understand that you're not familiar with the details, but are you aware as to whether or not it has impacted your community?
I'm not aware.
Okay. Has it impacted your family?
No, it has not.
Has it impacted any of your friends?
Not that I am aware of.
You don't have this one, I got this one. I'm going to show you Exhibit 2, which is Bates stamp. So from time to time, I'm going to say the word Bates numbers or Bates stamped, and that's going to be the number at the bottom of the document. There's not one on that, but this document that I'm handing you, which is Exhibit 2, and is Bates number MNK T1 000-789-6477. Sorry about that. I see that one for a second. I want to make sure I didn't highlight on that one and give you one that's not highlighted. Yeah. Sorry about that. You familiar with this document?
Yes, I am.
This is a document that you prepared.
It is.
Do you know when you prepared it?
Excuse me. Most recently, prior to my job at Rising Pharmaceuticals, so prior to October 2017.
Is this your current resume?
It is.
You believe it to be accurate?
Yes, I believe it to be accurate.
On page 2 of the document, it talks about your education. See that? You see that?
Yes.
Other than the University of Missouri and Webster University, have you received any other formal education?
No, I have not.
After you left the University of Missouri in 2004, it seems to be that there's a spread between starting at Mallinckrodt in January of 2006. Do you see that?
I do.
Hopefully you did something fun those 2 years.
I had some odd jobs. I graduated early in 3.5 years, so I stayed in Columbia, had some, waitressing jobs, odd jobs around Columbia, Missouri, and was trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up.
And in that 2-year period, did you have any employment in the pharmaceutical world?
No.
You started at Mallinckrodt in January of 2006?
That is correct.
And how is it that you ended up getting connected with Mallinckrodt?
There was a family friend who made me aware of the position, and I applied, went through the formal application and interview process, and got the job
Where were you living back in 2006?
in St. Charles, Missouri.
Was the family friend a employee of Mallinckrodt?
Yes.
And who was that?
Jake Longenecker.
And what was Mr. Longecker's position at the time?
I do not recall.
And what position did you apply for?
Customer service representative.
And it indicates that you were a customer service representative from January to October, is that correct, of 2006?
That is correct.
Who was your direct report?
Sean Welsh,
What was Sean's title?
manager of customer service. I don't remember the exact title, but something along those lines.
What were your duties and responsibilities as a customer service representative from January of 06 to October of 2006?
It was a very entry-level position, primarily order entry and answering the phones.
And when you say order entry, what is it that you mean?
Entering orders, customer orders into our system.
So how is it that you would get information to enter? I'm just trying to understand a little bit.
So back then, specifically for controlled substances, customers had to order on a 222 form. So it was a form that had 3 different sheets of paper, and the customer would place the NDC number and the description that they wanted to order and the quantity. This is a DEA official form that was required to order any controlled substances, and so I would take that form along with like a PDF PO, for example, compare the quantities, make sure everything matched, and then would enter it into the system manually.
Okay, and what type of system were you entering it into?
I believe it was called JDE.
Did you have any contact with the clients, or was this information provided to you by somebody else and then you just checked it and inputted it?
They were mailed in. The forms were mailed in from the customer.
At that point in time, were you having any contact with customers?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. If there was a question I had about the order or something, or if it wasn't ordered in case quantity, for example.
And
yes.
these were scheduled medications?
That is correct.
Okay. And you indicated before when you were talking about the 222 form that you would compare the quantities and make sure everything matched and then would enter it into the system. What do you mean by compare quantities to make sure that there was a match?
Sure. So typically, in my recollection, customers would send in like a PDF PO with every single line item that they were wanting to order by NDC with the quantity. And then the 222 forms, I think there was only like maybe 10 lines, if I remember correctly, on those 222 forms. So the PO may have had, let's say, 30 lines on it, so there would have been, let's say, 3 222 forms. So I made sure that everything matched with the paper PO with the 222 forms.
And just when you say matched, what are you matching?
Sure. So making sure that the NDC number is correct on both, and the quantity is the same on both.
And did you receive any training in order to do that?
Yes, I did.
What kind of training did you receive?
I don't remember the specifics around the training. That was a long time ago. But I know that Sean and other senior peers that had been in that role for several years had trained me on what to look for and how to enter those orders.
And what were you looking for?
Again, to compare and make sure that everything aligned with the PO and the 222 form.
And when you say compared and aligned, do you mean that you wanted to make certain that the PO wasn't requesting additional medication over and above what the 222 provided?
No, not
Okay.
necessarily. No, it was just trying to make sure that whatever was entered into the system was accurate. So if there was basically whatever the customer was wanting to order.
Were you looking to make sure that the PO and the 222 matched, meaning the NDC numbers on the PO were the same things that were on the 222? The same NDC numbers and the same quantities?
The same NDC numbers and the same quantities.
Okay. And if there were a difference between what the 222 provided and what the PO provided, such that the PO would ask for different NDCs or different quantities, what was your responsibility at that point?
My responsibility, my responsibility would be to contact the customer and understand what they were trying to order and get it corrected prior to entering it into the system.
All right. And if the PO asked for additional quantities or different NDCs from the 222 and you called the customer and the customer said the PO is correct, what was the protocol at that point?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. Let's see. We had to, depending on the discrepancy, we may have had to receive a completely new 222 form, or if it was a small discrepancy, and again, I don't remember all of the specific details, but we could, make the change and then initial it on the 222 form, from what I recall.
And do you recall what kind of changes? Strike that. Do you recall what the protocol or the policy was as to what discrepancies you had authority or discretion to initial and rewrite?
I do not. That was a long time ago.
You've mentioned the term customers a few times. At that point in time, can you define who the customer was or what the customer was?
Absolutely. The wholesaler, distributors, direct retail chains, primarily. At this time, I know that our Mallinckrodt's customers were kind of divided amongst the customer service representatives, and AmerisourceBergen was one of my largest customers.
So back in 2006, Amerisource was one of your biggest customers?
That is correct.
Okay, and are they a wholesaler, a distributor, or a retail?
They are a wholesaler.
And what is your understanding of, or was your understanding of what a wholesaler was?
They distributed our product to pharmacies.
What's the difference between a wholesaler and a distributor?
That is used interchangeably.
Okay. And the retail would be the pharmacies?
Retail would be the warehousing pharmacies, so not an actual pharmacy on a corner. It would be their distribution centers for that retail chain.
So the bigger retail pharmacies?
Yes, correct.
And you mentioned ABC was your customer. Did you have some particular responsibility for Amerisource?
Order entry, and I was kind of their main point of contact. But obviously, we all kind of backed each other up within the group.
Were you receiving POs and 222s from specific clients, or was there a group of you that were sort of splitting them up as they came in?
They were pretty much divided up based on customer. So, I mean, piles of 222 forms would come in on specific days depending on the customer's order day. And again, AmerisourceBergen was my primary customer, so those would come to me. But we all kind of divided up the work amongst the group when needed.
Anybody else besides AmerisourceBergen that you can recall servicing as one of your customers?
That's the biggest one. That's the main customer that I remember.
And what drugs were at issue? What drugs were you providing to Amerisource?
I wasn't at that point in time providing any.
It was a bad question.
Okay.
What drugs were on the 222s and the POs? Scheduled drugs.
It could have been any product that Mallinckrodt was contracted with them on that we had in our portfolio.
And back in 06, January to October, do you recall what those drugs were, or any of those drugs?
I don't remember what products back in 2006, what AmerisourceBergen was ordering from us, no.
Do you remember what drugs were in Mallinckrodt's portfolio back in between January and October of 06? Scheduled drugs.
From my recollection, the portfolio of Mallinckrodt hasn't changed much over the years. So I don't remember exactly the dates of when products were added to the portfolio, but I know in my tenure there, the portfolio was pretty constant.
And if you would tell me, if you'd list the Schedule II drugs.
List the Schedule II drugs? Well, oxycodone acetaminophen, methylphenidate, hydrocodone was not a C2 back then. The fentanyl products had not been brought into the portfolio at that point in time. Trying to remember. Those are the ones that I remember off the top of my head.
And was your compensation structure? Can you tell me your compensation structure back then? I'm not asking you particulars, but do you recall if there were bonuses or?
No, it was an entry-level position, base salary.
And did there come a time where you got a promotion at Mallinckrodt?
In October of 2006, as my resume states, I moved on to senior contract specialist.
Now, prior to October of 2006, did you have any involvement with regard to the contracts between Mallinckrodt and any of its customers?
No, I did not.
Okay. In October of 2006 to November of 2007, you've listed on your resume senior contract specialist, correct?
Correct.
Who was your direct report?
I believe it was Cindy Cernecka at that time. I believe it changed throughout that year. But Cindy was the one that hired me into the group.
And what were your duties and responsibilities as a senior contract specialist?
Primarily working with sales and marketing on drafting proposals to send to customers. They would provide us, we pretty much had templates for every type of offer we were going to provide, and we input the information that was given to us from sales marketing, and then input it into the template and provided it back to them.
At this point in time, as a senior contract specialist, were you in the sales and marketing division or department?
No, it was not under marketing or
Okay.
sales.
What was it under?
If I recall, it may have been like a shared services group.
Okay. Is that the same thing for your CSR, customer service representative position you held before?
I believe so. At that time, again, I was at Mallinckrodt for almost 12 years, and the organization was restructured a few times. So from what I recall, those were both under shared services at that time.
And those would be shared services between sales and marketing and other groups?
Shared services for the company.
And what were your duties and responsibilities as a senior contract specialist? I know you indicated that you'd be provided templates.
Right.
Did you have contact with customers in that role?
No, not that I recall.
Okay. So if you don't mind describing it in a little bit more detail, you would be provided a template, or you had a template to do what with?
To input whatever price we were going to offer into the template and send it back to the appropriate salesperson to review, and if there were any issues, we would correct it. You know, collaboration with sales prior to sending it to the customer.
And these would be proposals with regard to drug pricing?
Yes, that is correct. There would be, there were multiple templates, but pricing was one of the templates that we worked on, yes.
And other than drug pricing, what were some of the other templates, if you recall?
Again, that was a long time ago. I don't recall all of the templates that I worked on.
On your resume, under Senior Contract Specialist, one of the bullets says, provide support in the resolution of price disputes, assisting internal personnel and external customers. That was the reason that I sort of asked you about whether or not you had contact with customers. What type of support did you provide with regard to price disputes?
Correcting the document.
And when you say correcting the document, what
Sorry,
is it?
so
That's right.
the document that was originally put together, if there was any errors or anything, let's say I originally put it together, it went to the salesperson, it went to the customer, other discussions took place around this proposal, and then it would have come back to me potentially to make any changes needed.
So
as a revision, sorry.
That's all right. So you used the term disputes, but it was really to address any errors that were in the documents?
Right, that's correct.
And would the customer contact you or the salesperson? I mean, how did that?
The salesperson was the main point of contact. If I remember correctly, our name was on the document for them to contact if needed, but I don't recall having interactions with customers at that point in time.
Who would provide you with the actual pricing? Is that something that you would obtain, or how would you obtain it?
That would come from marketing and sales, yeah.
Okay. And how would that be delivered to you? Was that by email or?
Yes, that would be delivered by email.
And again, as it relates to compensation, was there a bonus structure that was related to your productivity, or if you recall?
The way I remember this again was another pretty entry-level position where I had just a base salary.
And then did there come an opportunity for you to get another promotion while at Mallinckrodt?
That is correct.
And from November of 07 to January of 2010, you were a sales and marketing analyst?
That is correct.
And who was your direct report?
Ginger Collier throughout the majority of that time. I can't remember.
And do you know what Ginger's title was?
I don't remember her exact title, but something along the lines as like a senior marketing manager or something to that effect.
When you became a sales and marketing analyst, now did you become part of a different division from shared services to something else?
Correct. Now I was part of the marketing group.
Okay. Did you remain part of the marketing group for the rest of your tenure at Mallinckrodt?
No.
Okay.
I eventually moved into the sales group.
So were at least back at this time when you were in marketing, was there a separate group for sales and a separate group for marketing, or was it sales and marketing?
It was they were two separate groups, both under generics.
Okay. And was Ginger responsible for marketing and sales, or just marketing?
Just marketing.
Do you know who her counterpart at that time was in sales?
I don't remember exactly when Jane joined the company, but Jane Williams led the sales team. Back then, I know that, John Adams was also ran the sales group at one point. I don't remember the exact times of when people left.
Fair enough. In the sales and marketing analyst position, which that was a promotion, correct?
It was a promotion.
Yeah.
Yes.
What were your duties and responsibilities in sales and marketing?
Really, primarily ad hoc reporting, helped with creating reports and increase efficiencies in processes. Yeah.
And when you say reports, what kind of reports were you responsible to work on?
I ran multiple reports on a daily basis. I accessed Cognos, which is a tool, pretty much, that warehoused data that I could access.
So let's dig into that a little bit. What type of data were you accessing back at that time?
There was a lot of different data in there. There was order data and quantities and sales by pricing contract is what the system referred to it as. So direct sales and indirect sales. That was primarily what I used the tool for.
Okay. Was this all Mallinckrodt internal data, or was there any external data from other entities in this system?
In this system, it was only internal Mallinckrodt data.
Okay. And when you say direct sales and indirect sales, can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. So direct sales to like a direct retail chain, for example, where we would be sending product directly from our warehouse to their distribution centers. That would be considered a direct sale, because then at that point in time, their distribution centers would send it out to the pharmacies. And then indirect sales were more for the like a wholesaler, where we would send it again from our distribution center to their distribution center, and then we would receive a chargeback which is basically a financial true-up, once they sold the product to a pharmacy. So that chargeback is really kind of that indirect sale.
In November of 2007, was that your first experience with chargebacks?
Yes.
Okay.
That was my first experience with chargebacks.
Now, what was the purpose that, in your marketing position, what was the reason that you were creating these reports? So why were you looking at this pricing as it related to what your job was?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase it?
Sure.
Pricing?
Yeah. You indicated that Cognos contained a database which contains contract pricing information. I think that's what you said.
So contract pricing was the title of the customer. It was just a title name, contract pricing. So it was mainly like the quantities and then the sales. So it would take, somehow it was related to our JDE system to pull in the pricing to come up with the sales quantity, sales amount.
While you were doing
Sure.
this job, ostensibly there's somebody else that was doing what you were doing with 222s and POs, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. How does that get to then, I mean, where are you in that process?
In my role as an analyst, again, I would access, I received multiple requests on a daily basis for various reasons on what to run reports for.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, it was, for the sales team for them to understand what was going on with their customers. And yeah.
So is it fair to say then that the sales department would be the folks that were contacting you and saying, I need this information?
Again, I would get requests from various departments, not only sales, not only marketing, but other departments as well.
Did you have access to any external data? So a minute ago we talked about internal data. Did you have access at this point in this job to external data?
IMS was the only data that I recall from an external purpose. And I would very rarely access that database on my own, from what I recall. There were other people in the group that would basically gather the data on our market data on our products and put it into a nice, pretty format so we can easily read it rather than it just being a huge Excel spreadsheet of numbers.
So can I refer to them as Cognos reports, or that's not accurate because it's just data that was contained in Cognos and the report would be whatever report you were running?
It doesn't, Cognos reports is fine, however you'd like to refer to it.
Okay. And let's, for example, did you have specific customers at this point, or were you doing this across all customers?
I did not have any customers, no.
Okay. Do you know what the sales force were using any of those reports for?
Not at this time. Sales would have interactions with customers, and I wasn't, at this point in time, I wasn't really privy to those conversations or those meetings, if you will.
Did you know why Mallinckrodt was keeping information or data on quantities and drugs that were sold to any of its customers?
Well, at this point in time, I've been learning more and more about the industry, knowing that it's a highly regulated market. I didn't know the details around, necessarily anything, any details, but I knew that it was important information for the company to have and retain.
So in addition to the price of an NDC or of a drug, And in addition to the quantity, could you also obtain information on frequency of order?
Yes, there was it obtained a history. I don't remember how far back it went.
Okay, and what were the analytics? What was it tracking? It was tracking price?
Again, it didn't have price directly in Cognos. It was a reporting tool. I believe it connected with JDE, which JDE held the pricing. And which, if you remember, that's the system that I entered the orders in back in customer service. So I believe those two, from my understanding, those two systems were talking as far as the price on, effective price on what time frame and the dates and everything. And then it correlated that information and put it into Cognos as far as sales and quantity.
And frequency? Order history included frequency.
Well, frequency meaning that you could filter down on the data based on the specific time frame that you're looking for. Is that the question? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And we had talked earlier about contracts and pricing within contracts, correct?
Correct.
How did chargebacks relate to the contract price?
So the contract price is the price negotiated with the customer, and that's the price that would get loaded into the system. And the chargeback is really the difference between the WAC price and the contract price. So it's really getting again a financial true up of that customer's purchase. Specifically to the wholesalers.
Okay. Does the chargeback reflect what Mallinckrodt's customer actually sold the product for?
In terms of price?
Yes.
No, it does not.
Okay. So I get that there's a contracted price with Mallinckrodt's customer. What I'm trying to figure out is, what does this chargeback reflect? When you say the word true up, to me, it indicates that there's a difference in the contract price and what the actual medication was sold for.
No, so just for clarity purposes, the wholesaler will purchase the product at a WAC price.
That's not contracted price.
That is not a contract price. That
Okay.
is a set price. It's a wholesaler acquisition cost. They will, so just for sake of example, let's say the WAC price is $10. The negotiated contract price is $8. So once the wholesaler sells that product to a pharmacy, we would receive a chargeback, and it's not immediate. It's on whatever cadence that specific customer has agreed with Mallinckrodt, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, what have you. It's an aggregated report that's sent back to Mallinckrodt as far as their sales out quantity. That was sold on their contract, and then that $2 in that specific example would be that chargeback, true up, if you will, like I was referring to, back to their negotiated $8 contract price.
Okay. Was there ever a time where the chargeback would reflect a number that was less than the $8 price?
I mean, I was not in chargebacks. I was not, if, from my understanding, if there was a situation like that, then that would be a discrepancy that would be discussed with the customer. But again, that was not my role at this point in time, nor was I involved with the specific chargebacks.
Do you know why there was a difference in the WAC price and the contract price?
I don't know the general, purpose. From my understanding, that is kind of how the industry worked. Yeah.
Do you know how long the contracts were for? So if it was an $8 contract price, do you know for what period of time that price was extended to the customer?
It would vary. It was not a set price.
Do you know how the WAC price was determined?
No, not really, not to my recollection. In our markets that we were in, These products had been along for several years, so I wasn't really around when those WACs were determined for those specific, for those products at that time.
You mentioned IMS. What was IMS, or what is IMS?
IMS is a database that held market information. So to get you could gather information about market share and quantity, market quantity, year over year changes. Again, there was someone in our team that gathered all of that data and put it into like reports, if you will, so we could kind of see a historical view of market share.
Market share between Mallinckrodt and its competitors.
That is correct.
And do you know what type of detail was provided with regards to IMS? I mean, was it prescriber information? How detailed was it?
Oh, it was, so this information, I don't know the specifics really. This is information that is provided by our customers to IMS, from my understanding. Yeah.
And your customers were also buying product from your competitors?
Sure, absolutely.
And do you know why any of the folks at Mallinckrodt were interested in looking at the IMS data, at least at that time?
Well, and again, at this point in time when I was an analyst, I didn't really look at the data as much. I ran reports. I provided the data to those that requested it, and that really wasn't my role to do that. So.
Okay. Did that change later on?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did there come a time where you got a promotion from sales and marketing analyst?
Yes,
And was that to become an associate product manager?
that is correct.
And who was your direct report?
I believe it was Ginger Collier still at that point in time. Yeah,
And you did that from January of 2010 to August of 2011?
that's correct.
And what were your duties and responsibilities?
So at this point in time, I was it was an introductory product manager position, just kind of learning the roles and responsibilities of product manager. I was responsible for, I don't remember what specific products at that point in time, but it was a lot of the smaller volumes, smaller products in our portfolio.
Was this outside of the marketing group?
No, this is still in the marketing group.
Okay. And do you recall what products you were responsible for?
I don't recall at that point in time, no.
Do you know if any of them were scheduled products?
I don't recall.
And did you have responsibilities to be in contact with Mallinckrodt customers in this position?
No, there was very little, no. Occasionally, again, just to learn more, I would sit in on a call with a customer, with a sales representative and a customer, just to kind of understand the interactions and everything, but I did not have direct contact with the customers myself.
Okay. And one of the second bullet under that, at the end of it, it says, it uses the words demand management. What is that?
So in the generic, specific to controlled substances, there's quota, right? So we had constraints on what we could manufacture as well as sell, and demand management, was really kind of keeping an eye on the orders that were coming in compared to forecast to make, so we were responsible for forecasting for our specific product families. And if there was ever a situation where we were going to potentially go on to back order because of manufacturing delays or whatever the situation may have been, we were in charge of allocating product, if you will, so to specific customers.
If quotas were something you were dealing with at that point in time, would that necessarily implicate scheduled medications?
So I wasn't directly involved with quotas. The company received annual quotas for manufacturing and selling. That was not our role. That was not our responsibility. We were aware of the quotas, and that's, yeah.
And as far as demand management, how would you know if there were other companies that were also providing medication into the quota? How would you know whether or not you were exceeding the quota based on what other manufacturers were doing?
I don't understand that question.
Okay. One of the things you said you were involved with was demand management, and it was understanding what the quota was for a specific medication, correct?
Understanding, so I knew there was a quota.
Okay. Did you know what the quota was for any particular medication?
I mean, there would have potentially, but we potentially may have been notified, but to me, I have no concept of how much 1 metric ton would be in terms of bottles or anything like that. So I just knew that there was a quota, and another group, the corporate compliance group, managed that.
Okay. So what specifically then would you do with regard to demand management?
So so if there was ever a situation where, okay, so let me back up. So knowing there is quota, and there are restrictions, constraints, so we can only sell so much. Just that's kind of just in the back of our heads, knowing that.
This is bulk and dosage?
Bulk and I was only in regards to the bulk, or
Okay.
excuse me, dosage.
Okay.
I was only
Sorry.
responsible for a dosage piece of
Okay.
it. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the bulk at all. And the demand management piece really came in as far as looking at what the orders were coming in and compared to forecast to make sure that we were forecasting appropriately. There was a monthly meeting with multiple groups, and the corporate compliance team was aware of the forecast, and if there was ever a point where the forecast were to, come close or hit that capacity, then they had to be aware of what the expectation was from a forecast perspective.
So you would provide that forecast to the compliance group, who would then make a determination whether there was a quota issue?
I don't remember exactly how it was given to them, but I know that they were involved in that process.
Okay. And then you became a product manager in August of 2011, correct?
That is correct.
And that was another promotion?
That is correct.
Still in the marketing department?
Yes.
Direct report is?
Ginger Collier.
Duties and responsibilities in product manager?
Primarily the same, the same as the associate product manager. Forecasting, making sure that you're hitting your forecast, working with sales on any initiatives that they're working with customers on. Sales and marketing was, there was constant collaboration between the two groups.
And when you talk again about hitting forecast, does that mean, does that relate to production?
Right, so where we, our customer commitments, where sales has agreed on, X customer contracting with us on a specific product, and they expect, let's say, 100 units, and so we would forecast 100 units in the forecast.
Okay. Any customer contact as a product manager?
I'm sorry?
Any customer contact?
Very minimal. There would be you know, again, occasionally we would participate in calls with the sales team and customers, but very minimal. Or, yeah.
One of the things that it says you did under product manager was created customer analytical models detailing financial productions to aid sales and customer negotiations.
Sure.
What does that mean?
So, again, you know, using the reports from Cognos, looking at historical sales and quantity, you know, looking at where we've forecasted. So forecasting, you know, using IMS data to forecast, that would provide a historical view of the changes in the market, if you will. So if the market's declined 2%, or, you know, over the past 5 years consecutively, we can expect those to continue, you know, by molecule, to decline potentially. So it was a forecast is completely assumption based, and so would really just kind of use the assumptions from the forecast to help the sales team in discussions with customers.
And consistently achieve forecast targets at 6% demand variance and 5% financial variance. What does that mean?
A variance in regards to what my forecast was and how the demand came in, as well as financial, with the price obviously being a factor.
And would the IMS data provide you price data as it related to competitors?
It had a not by competitor. If I recall, it had a price for the market, like a aggregated price.
What about the chargeback data? Were you still utilizing that data?
Sure, I would still run reports in Cognos, sure.
Did the chargeback data indicate competitor pricing?
No, the chargeback data, again, was only Mallinckrodt data, internal data.
Based on WAC and contract sale and contract price?
That is correct.
You indicate here 2 successful new product launches. Do you know what product launches those were?
If I recall, moving into this position, these product launches were well underway in terms of all of the work had already kind of been completed with changes in the department and people leaving and whatnot. So I was, from what I recall, I was responsible for those product families at the time of launch. And if I recall, they were fentanyl lozenge and fentanyl patch. And just to clarify launches, so in the generic market, you know, these were generic markets that had already been well established. We were not the first generic to market or anything. The demand was already created. It was, you know, a set demand. It kind of is what it is. It's a pie, if you will. And so we were looking to get a piece of that pie. There was no, I mean, we weren't creating, you know, when you hear launches, I just wanted to make sure to clarify.
And would you agree that the way to increase that market share was pricing?
Yes, you had to be competitive on price. That's generic industry.
And were you responsible at all for, and maybe this overlaps to some of the things that we've already talked about in your prior positions, but responsible for communicating to customers pricing or pricing changes?
Sales was the main point of contact with customers.
And so sales would be responsible for providing information regarding pricing or changes in pricing?
That is correct.
All right, October 2012 to July 2013, another promotion to Regional Account Manager.
That is correct.
And who was your direct report?
Jane Williams.
Are you familiar with the term annual incentive plan or terms? As it relates to Mallinckrodt's bonus structure?
Oh, I don't remember exactly what it was called.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know whether or not your change in position from product manager to regional account manager impacted your bonus structure or how bonuses were paid?
I do believe, from what I recall, I do believe I was receiving, included in some sort of bonus structure at that point in time. I don't remember the specifics.
Can you just hand me that personnel file? The next exhibit I'm going to show you is plaintiff's exhibit number 3. This is Bates Range MNK T1000 7219775. This is a document dated August 9, 2012. Would you take a look at it? And this is why I was asking about the annual incentive plan. I hadn't mentioned yet the sales incentive comp plan, but this is sort of what I'm asking about now, what the difference is between those, since it seems to be that you're now in a position where you're moving from annual incentive plan to the SICP.
And Mark, since it looks like we'll be discussing Ms. Cardetti's personal financial information, I'd just like to designate this part highly confidential.
Do you recall what the annual incentive plan was?
I don't remember the details
Okay.
of the plan now.
So, and I appreciate the fact that you don't recall the details. It was obviously a long time ago.
Right.
The annual incentive plan, was that a bonus plan?
Again, I don't recall.
Okay. How about the sales incentive comp plan, ESICP, which I presume was something that you were involved in until you left Mallinckrodt?
Yes, from my recollection, this did include a bonus, but again, I don't recall the details of the specifics.
Do you know if the bonus was tied to volume of sales?
The bonus was tied to various different things. If I recall, we had, on an annual basis, had to create, I think there were like 5 or 6 different goals, if you will, and I think one of those, from what I recall, was sales based. I mean, others were like personal development, or it could have been various things.
Okay. But one of those factors was volume of sales.
One of those factors, yes, was sales.
And I may have asked you, your direct contact was Jane Williams, which is also reflective in Exhibit 3, correct?
That is correct.
At this point in time, you received a company vehicle, correct?
I believe so. Back in 2012,
It's
I believe so.
Yeah, okay. And what were your
Oh,
duties?
sorry.
Yeah, well, sorry. What were your? I should have pointed out. What were your duties and responsibilities as a regional account manager?
This was an introductory sales position. I had very few small accounts, just to kind of learn the roles and responsibility of the sales team.
So now you went from marketing to sales.
That is correct.
Okay. And did you receive any formal training from Mallinckrodt when you started in the sales position?
I received training, yes, from at various points in time from various people. I felt like I had several mentors.
Besides mentors, what I'm referring to is, was there any formal classroom type training that you received?
Classroom training.
Didn't have to be in a class, but
No. I mean, there was training, whether it was in person or over the phone. I mean, with us working remote, yes, there was training for the position.
And what types of training from marketing to sales did you receive?
I don't recall the details on the training.
You recall how much training you received?
I don't recall. I mean, I do remember that not having any sales experience, you know, Jane worked very closely with me on everything at the very beginning. So,
would you have contact with customers at this point?
yes, I would.
Okay. And do you recall which customers you had contact with?
I don't remember which customers I worked with at this specific time, no.
And what was the point of having customer contact? I mean, what were you doing?
I was the main contact for the customer. I was working with the customer on opportunities, on existing business. Again, I was the main point of contact. So if anything came up.
And when you use the term opportunities, what do you mean?
So, I mean, it was a business, and we were looking to grow in terms of, again, at our restrained capacity, going back to the whole quota. There were situations where we lost business, and we had to try to, work to regain the business. Yeah, I mean, you looked for opportunities to continue to work with the customer.
And when you say continue to work with the customer, you mean continue to grow or increase volume?
Potentially. Again, I mean, these customers were well-established customers with Mallinckrodt that already had products on contract. So it was my job to, work with them we didn't want to lose the business. So.
Were you responsible for negotiating pricing with customers in
Yes.
this role?
So there was again, pricing was collaborative between sales and marketing. It was not singly decided upon. Yeah.
In this role, were you the individual who would be requesting from marketing those types of reports that you had been generating earlier when you were in those roles?
Potentially, with having that experience, I could have gathered it myself. I still had access to it from what I recall.
And then in July of 2013, you became the Director of National Accounts. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That was also a promotion?
That is correct.
Do you know whether you were still part of the SICP program, the Sales Incentive Compensation Plan?
Excuse me, I believe I was, yes.
And so one of the factors that would go into your bonus was volume of sales?
Along with various other objectives as well.
Going to move to strike that as non-responsive. One of the factors that you was used as a Director of National Accounts to determine your bonus was volume of sales, correct?
Volume of sales was one of the factors that was included.
And who was your direct report and Director of National Accounts?
Jane Williams?
At this point, did you have anyone reporting to you?
No.
So what was the difference between regional account manager then and direct national accounts as it related to duties and responsibilities, if any?
It was really just, again, regional was kind of an introductory sales role. It wasn't technically regional. Our accounts were not geographical or anything. It was by account specific, so kind of graduated, if you will, to work with some of the larger accounts.
Do you recall which accounts you started working with as the Director of National Accounts?
Sure.
It says 16 relationships.
Right. So the largest ones were Walgreens, WeBad, as it mentions here, WeBad, Walgreens, AmerisourceBergen, and OptiSource were my large accounts at that point in time.
What is WeBad?
WeBad is a sourcing group for Walgreens and AmerisourceBergen.
Do you know if that was the same thing as Walgreens Boots Alliance?
That is correct.
And as a Director of National Accounts, was one of the things you were responsible with these relationships was to increase volume of sales?
So again, we worked with customers on opportunities to grow sales, but again, we were within constraint due to quota. So the quota was established for the company by the DEA, and we were operating within those constraints.
Was it your understanding that the quota that you're referring to was directly related to Mallinckrodt versus the entire market?
Yes, so the quota was specific to Mallinckrodt. From my understanding, each manufacturer received a certain amount of quota from the DEA.
And in order to work on the opportunities, as you had indicated within the quota, would you work with marketing on those opportunities?
Yes, so it was a pretty collaborative approach within sales and marketing on anything. So marketing didn't do anything by themselves, sales didn't do anything. I mean, there was always the collaboration between the two groups.
Did you ever send out emails to any of your accounts regarding opportunities?
I mean, yeah, there was situations where we were working on opportunities. Again, and just to kind of back up, not knowing the full context of, I mean, this is very generally speaking, right? So there could have been lost business, and so we were looking to grow on that specific product that we had lost business from another customer. So that could then become an opportunity with another customer.
So if you lost business with one customer, that would leave room in the quota to go to another customer? Is that what you mean?
Sure, yes, that's correct, yeah.
And how would you become aware as the regional, as the Director of National Accounts, how would you become aware of room in the quota?
I would become aware of lost business, not necessarily how much room we had left in the quota per se, but knowing, again, we had the monthly meetings with sales, marketing, supply planning. I mean, there were multiple people in the room to go over the forecast on a monthly basis.
What's the distinction between what's the distinction, if any, between lost business and room in the quota?
Well, lost business is if there was a product on contract with a specific customer and we went from having the business to no longer having the business for whatever reason. It could have been a variety of reasons. And in terms of quota, again, I wasn't really involved in what those quota limits were or, yeah.
But one of your duties and responsibilities was to replace business if possible with your accounts.
Well, sure. We were looking to grow within constraints, knowing that there were constraints for the company.
Okay. And the constraints, again, are the quotas.
The constraints would be the quotas.
Okay.
Or manufacturing capabilities. I mean, if we were constrained on a manufacturing line or something, I mean, there could have been other constraints.
Are you aware of situations where where Mallinckrodt wasn't able to meet whatever the quota level was due to manufacturing constraints?
I was not aware. I mean, I wasn't given that type of information as far as where we came in compared to quota year after year from what I recall. Again, that was not our responsibility.
So let's assume for a minute you lost business of, we'll just hypothetically say 100 units of whatever the molecule was.
Sure.
There were other account representatives, right, in your group that had other customers.
That is
So
correct.
what was the mechanism that was used such that you both wouldn't offer the same opportunity to the customer?
We had weekly meetings. Everybody was aware of what was going on as the business. Again, there were monthly meetings to review the forecast. So the forecast, as the product managers were responsible for those specific products, they were fully aware of what was going on with that product, any opportunities or offers that were outstanding with customers, any lost business, all of that would go into the forecast. So they were kind of the manager over the product family, and sales was kind of the manager over the customers. However, there was, as I said, there was constant collaboration between the groups. So everybody kind of was somewhat aware of what was going on, but the product manager kind of held that, if you will, to your question on.
Because the product manager was responsible for a specific SKU or a specific molecule?
Product families. It was kind of designated by product families, which
Okay.
included several SKUs in some situations.
And was the goal to reach the ceiling of the quota?
There was not necessarily a goal to hit that. There was just it was set by the DEA, and you know, just to kind of give some context with the quota, from my understanding, I was not involved in how those were set or anything, but that was really kind of looking at, here's our current book of business, and here's how it equates to quota. This is just my layman's view of the
Fair
quota
enough.
world. Here's our book of business. Here's what it equates to quota. This is the quota request that we are needing, or requesting, I guess. And then the DEA could say yay or nay. They could grant us 100%. They could grant us 20% of our request. So the request would be a comprehensive view from again, my layman's perspective as far as what I'm aware.
Are you referring now to changes in the quota? Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to the original request. But again, I was not involved in the request. I did not. Yeah.
Understood. But you were involved in sales, correct? correct?
I was involved in
And
sales.
you were involved in offering opportunities to accounts, right? Customers.
I was involved in working with customers.
And you were restrained by the quota, correct?
That is correct.
And it was an effort in weekly meetings and other meetings and collaboration to make certain that if there was some lost business and the quota wasn't being met, to figure out what opportunities you could offer to other customers so that you could reach the quota, correct?
Object to the form. Go ahead.
Yeah, not necessarily. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question now?
Absolutely. I'll ask it to you this way. What was the purpose of your understanding in your role and responsibility that there was a quota? I mean, why did you know that? You were a salesperson who had specific accounts you were dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you have to know what the quota was?
I didn't need to know. I mean, I didn't have that detail.
Okay.
I just knew that there was a quota.
So then how is it that you determined that there was an opportunity? And when I'm using the term opportunity, and you can tell me if this is your understanding as well, an opportunity is an opportunity for a Mallinckrodt customer to purchase more of a molecule. Is that your understanding of an opportunity?
Opportunity is looking for products that are not on contract, that could potentially be on contract. Again, knowing that there are constraints, it's not like we could go out after the entire market or after every customer, but yeah, there were opportunities with customers.
Okay, and I'm trying to maybe we're saying the same thing, but when we're using the opportunity, what you mean is an opportunity for a Mallinckrodt customer to purchase more of or to start purchasing a molecule from Mallinckrodt.
Yeah, the way that I'm using opportunity would be that they're not currently purchasing it.
Okay.
And there's an opportunity for them to potentially purchase it.
Okay. Was there any opportunities to increase what they were purchasing as opposed to they weren't purchasing it?
There were, I mean, dependent on the customer. Some customers dual sourced, for example, would give dual awards, so 50% to Mallinckrodt and 50% to another manufacturer.
Okay. And I'm going to get to that in a second, but
Okay.
back to what we were talking about, which is, and let's just use your example, which is going to an account who wasn't purchasing that molecule and offering them that opportunity, correct?
Again, the customers are the wholesaler distributors,
Correct.
direct retail chains.
Yes.
But yes, that's who we would be working with.
And when you were told that you could reach out to one of your accounts to offer them an opportunity, right? The opportunity was defined in quantity, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And what was your understanding of how that quantity was set, if you had an understanding?
I mean, there was collaborative discussions to understand what if there was, for example, business that was lost at another account. We lost 100 units. Is there an opportunity to work with another customer on this 100 units? You know.
And why is it that you wanted to replace? Why did you want to replace the business? Let's use the 100 units to one customer. You lose that business to a competitor. What's the purpose of? Why would you want to sell the 100 units to another customer?
It was a business. I mean, we were trying to. I mean, to grow as much as possible. Again, within constraints. It wasn't like we could go out to the entire market or anything. I mean, it was a very regulated market, and there were a lot of constraints around it.
Okay. And so, besides quota, what can you list other constraints?
As I mentioned, manufacturing constraints would also be a potential where I don't know the details regarding manufacturing, but if there was two products that were utilizing the same manufacturing line or something, and that line was already at capacity, so I don't know the details, but I just know there were manufacturing constraints.
So besides quota and besides manufacturing capabilities, what else went into the restraints?
I can't recall. I mean, those were the main ones that I recall.
So let's assume for a second, for purposes of my question,
Okay.
that you don't have any manufacturing constraint, that you can manufacture it. That's not a problem. That would lead then to the only restraint or constraint being the quota, correct?
Object to the form. Go ahead.
You can answer the question.
I mean, again, knowing that there was quota that the company had to operate under, and we couldn't go above that quota. I wasn't involved in establishing that quota. But again, knowing that there was quota for the company, there were constraints on what we could sell.
Okay. I appreciate that answer, and I'm asking you for a yes or no. And you can explain it any way you'd like, but I'm looking for a yes or no. If we take out a constraint of manufacturing capability, then the only other constraint is quota, correct?
Object to the form.
Quota would have been,
It's a yes or no.
Object to the form.
yes.
Okay. You were a director of national accounts from July of 2013 through October of 2017, correct?
That is correct.
Created monthly compliance reporting for forecast accuracy, which was incorporated by the entire sales team. Am I reading the right thing?
I'm sorry, where are you?
I'm sorry, that's fair. I'm at the bottom bullet under Director of National Accounts. Can you please tell me what compliance reporting is?
Sure. So if, going back to that example, if a customer contracted a specific product with us and they told us that their demand, a lot of times it was a complete estimate on their behalf, but an estimated demand was 100 units, then it was really kind of for forecasting purposes. We would review on a monthly basis if we were, if that 100 units was coming in or not. Again, for forecasting purposes, we needed to have that information accurate.
Going back to your example where you said that they could be buying 50-50, they could be buying from Mallinckrodt and buying from a competitor. How would you know whether or not they were buying from a competitor?
If the customer was willing to share that, or let's say that it was an RFP put out for 100 units 1 month, and then the next RFP comes out and it only is for 50 units. In looking back, you know that their full demand is 100 units, right? So if only 50% of that is going out to bid now,
How do you confirm the accuracy of what their full demand is? Did you?
We can't confirm that information from the customer. We wouldn't have that information. The customer typically would provide what their, again, estimated usages would be.
We talked about IMS data before. Would IMS data give you a glimpse into what that customer did the month before?
No, the IMS data was by manufacturer and not by our customers, at least the data that I'm familiar with and saw.
Are you aware of whether there was any data that Mallinckrodt had access to which would allow you to look and see what other competitors were selling to your customers, or what other competitors were selling to your customers?
No, we wouldn't have that information.
Mark, we've been going about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Take a quick break.
Absolutely.
We're going off the record at
Make sure you line
9:28
up.
a.m.